the context of the Resilience Hub of the 26th COP, now holding in Glasgow. My name is Yemi Akimbamijo, the Executive Director. Is going to be giving us some welcome remarks, and the Global Director for Agriculture and Food Global Practice in the World Bank's in the chat box as the meeting progresses. Martin, it's a great joy to have you with us, and you now do have the floor.
Very good. Thank you very much, Yemi, and greetings to all. From Washington, D.C. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm very pleased to provide a few opening remarks for this event. Fostering on agriculture innovation for people, nature, and climate in Africa. Let me first provide some reflections on why agriculture innovation is important for Africa. Of course, the starting point is that agriculture in Africa is already not fit for purpose, as it is failing to contribute to healthy people, healthy planet, and a healthy economy. Hunger has been increasing, since 2014. Crop yields are already being affected by climate change. Food loss and waste is significant. The sector is a large contributor to the continent's greenhouse gas emissions and the biggest driver of biodiversity loss. And of course, COVID-19 situated and amplified, the weaknesses of the sector. Of course, also the starting point of not being fit for particularly very sobering, considering that the continent needs to double food production by 2050 to feed a rapidly growing population, while at the same time facing the headwinds of climate change. Meet a rise. At the same time, the spending on COVID-19. So what needs to change? Firstly, we need more investment and targeted investment in technology equitable access for women and young people who are often left behind. We also need to invest now in a new generation of African agricultural resources. We can foster innovation for people, nature, and climate in Africa. Thank you very much, and back to you, Yen.
Excellent. Thank you for such a wonderful
that are developed through GCRF funding. What does that actually mean in practical terms? It means engaging with local researchers between the UK and You may know about a using climate smart research, etc. And it's a really big project. So it's a bit difficult to really talk about it without spending a full hour, but it has had an immense impact because it's engaged so well with local expertise. It's not just about and one of the things a project of that size also reveals is that it's not just about engaging with a particular institution and to really draw across the breadth of several countries' levels of knowledge and really taking advantage of knowledge exchange across different countries and using the commonalities in that across those countries to really make an impact and really create good research to make that impact. And even between African countries and countries in other parts of the world as well, you'll see from some of the large investments that GCRF has made, like the hubs, say, for example, the One Ocean Hub, where it engages not only with looking at oceanic cultures and economic policies and the sort of science around those oceanic areas around the African continent, but also around continents and areas around other parts of the world as well, and kind of draws parallels between those areas. So there's a lot to learn from just sharing knowledge, not just within Africa and across Africa, but between Africa and other regions as well. And Africa, of course, being such a large continent, there is plenty of diverse things to note before I pass it on back to you, Yemi, is to encourage women to participate in the research process. And this is something I want to note, particularly because today is the Gender and Science and Innovation Day at COP26. There is quite a lot left out of research if you don't engage across different genders, and that includes including women in a bigger way in the research project and as subjects of research as well. It's really important. Within communities and within households. The last thing I'll mention is something that way you can be a short
of kind. It's a kind of you've just got to must have as we unpack how we can foster agricultural innovations in the interest of the people. The managing the when I saw that
I'm not sure if I would deserve all of that, but I'm really honored to be among such a fine group of individuals, learning from each. Question a lot. What does it mean, resilient agriculture? Because it means different things for different people, and we always say Green Climate Fund, that we were able to establish the fund as well as other our investors, because climate adaptation for farmers. By the end of this discussion, we all realized that when most of those farmers don't have any savings, so they end up assets. An example about what kind of business and consistent source portfolio companies reported that they were better. Have been able hence that allowed us to go out and bring money play cannot be overstated. In addition to that, we were able risking, I mean that, if you talk to our investee companies, one of the main issues, they are early stage companies. If you look at a company that's doing drip irrigation in Africa, the end cost for financing for farmers will be around 3 times that of a farmer that's doing that is borrowing to do drip irrigation in Europe or the US. 3 times, guys. So what we need de-risking facilities to actually de-risk the cost of financing for those farmers. And we're not talking but any
about one and they don't often have the competitive edge. Now, that is, in a nutshell, describing the financial atmosphere where these people operate. And these people provide 80%. Now, Managing Director of Acumen Resilient Agriculture, and we're so glad to have been.
So the solution cluster unleash the potential for nature positive innovation. That is innovation that spurs agriculture productivity while contributing to positive environmental and socioeconomic outcomes. You will all know that innovation has been a major engine for agriculture transformation in the last century. In that case, I mean, it has enabled an increase in productivity to feed a growing population globally, led to the development of drought or flood-tolerant crop varieties, increased water efficiency, allowed a better understanding of soil nutrient conditions, increased access to weather and market advisory services, and storage facilities such as cold chain technologies, and many more. I mean, innovation has really showed us that we can be able to really produce food for a growing population globally, even though, as my previous speakers have mentioned, we still have aspects of challenges in terms of food access. It doesn't mean that globally we are not producing enough food, but access to food in some regions and productivity, especially in Africa, has been on the decline since 2010. Despite these successes, there are also challenges with the way innovation has been designed and deployed. The digital divide is a well-documented challenge in different contexts, such as between developing nations of Africa, part of Asia, the Caribbean, the Pacific, versus the rest of the world. The gender and age gap in ICTs and subsequent information asymmetry, differences in access and application of big data between farmers and corporations, which empowers corporations to push certain products to farmers and consumers. This digital divide or gap is these are just a few examples in the digital divide space, but there are many more. And so innovation has not been very, very good in terms of advancing equity and helping us solve some of these challenges. Food systems, on the other hand, have also contributed to significant negative externalities, such as water and soil pollution, declining genetic diversity, biodiversity loss, low nutrient density in foods that we consume, overfishing, habitat degradation, malnutrition and obesity, greenhouse gas emissions. You've heard about the greenhouse gas emissions, and overall inequalities, among others. So innovation in the current era for food systems face an even bigger challenge. It must therefore focus on addressing these externalities while enabling us to feed a growing population, whether it's increasing food access and reducing post-harvest losses or food loss and food waste. All these areas of inefficiency are ripe for innovation to help us address. So this solution cluster that I was part of promotes investment, deployment, and scaling of innovation for nature-positive production in 4 key areas: the area of technology and practices, knowledge systems, including scientific and local knowledge, policy and governance, and data and digital. A variety of possible game-changing solutions were submitted to us under those categories from all over the world. So there's no question about the possibility of having game-changing solutions that can help us to be able to drive food production while taking care of nature and people. As a result, different stakeholders have joined efforts globally to promote the use of innovation to boost nature-positive production. For example, at least 30 member states have expressed their willingness to support a global campaign on transforming agriculture innovation for people, launched by the Honorable Lord Goldsmith, UK Minister for Pacific and the Environment at the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office at the 2021 Climate Adaptation Summit. This campaign benefits from strong support under the UK COP26 presidency. The Agriculture Innovation Mission for Climate, or AIM for Climate, spearheaded by the United States, United Arab Emirates, Australia, Brazil, Denmark, Israel, Singapore, and the UK presidency and Uruguay, aims at increasing public spending on agriculture research and innovation in the next 5 years. We've also had big announcements around this support. The Commission on Sustainable Agriculture and Innovation, COSAI, also established a voluntary task force on principles and metrics to develop and agree on a set of principles and metrics to guide and track innovation for sustainable agriculture. These are just a few initiatives that we've seen globally. Just to end my summary of this solution cluster is that we are still carrying on the work of the solution cluster in COP26 through the campaign on transforming agriculture innovation for people, nature, and climate, where most of the stakeholders that I've mentioned above engaged. We are also forging ahead with the formation of a coalition that will drive this work beyond the UN Food Systems Summit and invite all interested parties to join us. Let me pause there, Yemi, and also looking forward to engage more in terms of questions. Thank you.
Excellent, Susan. Thank you very much for taking us into the world of the enlarging data and digital. That, again, is the second gap that we need to be mindful of. And you did speak a little bit about how to bridge the food gap and the nutrition gap. Indeed, we have issues of malnutrition, undernutrition, and all sorts of other forms of derivatives. But one of the biggest challenges is also how to manage the data and to also use the digital power that can help us bridge this gap. Indeed, agricultural research and innovation is becoming high on the agenda, and we must ensure that it remains high on the agenda, because without the research and innovation capacities, we will not be able to raise the productivity issue. And this is not just increasing the quantum of food on the field. No, it is actually taking the results of research and innovation from the bench and onto the shelf, translating them into commercializable products. So thank you very much, Susan, for a very, very enlightening presentation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, our time is very, very rapidly thinning out on us. Let me quickly say that feel free to post your questions on the chat box, and somehow we'll try to harvest them and kind of aggregate them, and this panel of 3 wise people will help us to deal with them. But before we get onto that panel to address issues of the core questions, I would like to actually bring over my dear friend and brother by name Chilidzi Machin Vandila, who is the Chief Executive Officer ad interim. No, I think he's just the Chief Executive Officer of the Food, Agriculture and Natural Resources Policy Analysis Network, FANPAN, who will give us a brief reflection on the presentations. TM, I hope your energy situation will allow you to make this presentation. The floor is yours, my dear brother.
Okay, Program Director, thank you so much for the introductions. Let me also extend my gratitude to the organizers of this event for inviting FANAPAN, but specifically me personally to be afforded opportunity to be part of this distinguished guests who are outlining what is it that we need to make sure that when we are talking about climate change, what is it that we can is delivered wide remaining there for every people in this planet to enjoy. With those brief opening remarks, let me then come to reflecting on the discussions with regard to the topic of today. I will not go into individual analysis of what every speaker then have outlined. For me, then I can, then from deepest part of my heart, let me also then give that we learn from what we're doing better and what we're not doing better. For me, there is a capacity gap emanating from the supply side of research evidence. What do I mean by that? The way in which we communicate in science, two, what sort of language are we using when we're communicating science? More specifically, then we communicate to our colleagues within the research and scientific arena, more so also using what I call a jargon, which more often is not understandable to those that are supposed to benefit from the research results and evidence that we're generating. And also then looking at that, what sort of skills do researchers, more specifically the young coming researchers, in terms of having the capacity and skills to communicate better the research evidence evidence in its own is not an end in itself, but it must make sure that then those that are in practice, those that are in decision making and policy making, they have got to take that evidence to make sure that they integrate those when they are designing policies and programs and projects, to make sure that they cater for the local context, to make sure that they deliver positive benefits to those that are supposed to benefit from those interventions that we're implementing. Score here is that there is a connect between research, practice, and policy. And that I can emphasize here is that there is an important need or an urgent need to make sure that, one, co-creation starts to happen. Then the prerogative of defining a research agenda is not only entrusted on those that are going to do that research. Co-creation is important. Second, co-implementation. We need to bring along all those that are part of the value chain, the food system elements, to make sure that they are part of the implementation process. An element is that co-monitoring, evaluation, and learning happens. More often we implement interventions, but we don't get back to reflect to say what has worked well and how, and therefore it means that we really need to reflect back to say, what is it that we're learning, to make sure learning as we go, to make sure that to rank them, and therefore to integrate the local knowledge in the co-design of the intervention is very important. That was the first step that we did under the GCRF Africa project. Number two, we made sure that experts who had got a deeper understanding in terms of policy processes are part of the process, and also to make sure that the research experts in terms of the transdisciplinary areas that we're looking at, from climate, then to socioeconomics, to biophysical elements, the local researchers were involved to make sure that they are assisting the project researchers to understand the local context and the environment. Number three, which is also important, dissemination is important. So integrated robust processes in terms of making sure that those that are supposed to benefit the process, because if you don't co-create, people then don't appreciate the research results that come out of that. Fourth, and very much important, the exchange processes in terms of making sure that transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, there are exchange of ideas to make sure that when one element is what was presented here. But I think the session of question and answers will provide me more opportunity then to outline some of the issues that as FANAPAN we do to make sure that research then is communicating to practice, then to policy and to decisions. Yemi, my dear brother, I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Tia. I really thank you for doing justice. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've heard from a broad area of speakers. It's now the time to questions, and we'll be looking at the box for you may be throwing at them. But let me start off. On how do we de-risk the financing
I think that's an excellent question. And so the way we, from ARA's point of view, we do not finance the farmers directly, right? We invest in startups that will do the financing for farmers. So we're looking for business models where the sustainability of the farmer is an essential building block, because otherwise it will become transactional.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, successful models that we have seen so far when it comes to how to de-risk the slash incubator program, doing better. Companies with entrepreneurs that understand the local environment, even if they are not locals, but understand the challenges, doing better. We see companies that are small, doing better. We see companies that actually look at farmers and work with the farmer to change the farmer's mindset that the land productive asset. How can you generate more value from that land? These are kind of more successful startups that we have seen. Still, their cost of capital is high. That we have seen so far to de-risk those companies where money that is used to be in the form of grants in the past are now being used in the form of de-risking facilities. So grant is a non-returnable money. So now when you see a foundation offering that same amount at 1% interest, and when you mix that with the 10 or 15% cost of capital in that market, then the effective cost of capital is passed through to farmers. Can afford buying more of that product, or can afford we see. But definitely need to see more, because these are just islands. We need to see more. We need to see more incubators that are just focused on agriculture.
Right. Well, thank you very much. Susan, I'd like to come back.
Be aware of. They are not just producing food for the sake of producing it, but it's also a contributor to their livelihood. Sector is going to be critical, so that innovations, first of all, that we are co-designing, and especially in Africa, I want to pick on the point in terms of the number of innovations that are designed without the input of farmers, with the input of government actors. And so really designing those innovations with the end users in mind, it's going to be critical. So those kind of partnerships that bring together those actors and then look at co-designing technologies in the food space with full engagement of those actors and full knowledge is going to be important for the technologies to be taken up for adoption as well as for scaling. I think, Yemi, there are so many cases that we've seen of effective private-public partnerships. And I could go on, but I'd like to mention the aspect of government and where it comes in, because we've had aspects around sometimes that we are designing are not being adopted. And we know very well that a lot of cases, the policy environment is not conducive for a lot of technologies and innovations. So having government on our side helps us to alleviate and to build enabling policy environment that then can be able to help private sector actors, when they invent and develop technologies, they can be able to be taken
But and that's something I'm really, really keen to engage on. But
while the science and technology of
more. Okay. Tamara, your take home.
Well, my climate change is a factor more on mitigation.
In mind when we're designing technologies and co-design with them and ensure that we're inclusive and participatory. Thank you.
Perfect. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to bring to the platform Vijay Rangarajan, Director General, Americas and Overseas Territories of the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, to give us the Vijay. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Yemi, and thank you all of you hugely. That's been an incredibly rich discussion, and I've drawn the short straw in trying to even attempt to summarize. But access to technology and information, access to finance, and access to market. That, I think, gives us then systems which are much more resilient to the sorts of shocks that we've seen through COVID, but we will see many more in the form of climate shocks. Second big point, I think we're all agreed, the need to transform agriculture is just crucial. It's too large a part of carbon in the world, a quarter of greenhouse gas emissions, use of water, all of the issues about land use change, and biodiversity as well. And we have to do so in a way that plays to the development needs and the hearts of the community. I'm glad so many of you stressed that need to co-create, to co-implement. I think that is absolutely crucial, certainly from a UK point of view, a lesson we have taken very powerfully in all of our development work. Africa in particular is so vulnerable to climate change. I mean, I think the figure at the moment is 1.7% of climate finance is spent on solutions for smallholder farmers. We've got to do more of that.
We need to wrap up now, I'm afraid.
I will wrap up. I think Jeremy's finished on a couple of things. Your mind the gap point is right. We have to do so much more to fill this gap as we go. I won't repeat what Susan said, but she flagged some of the things I was going to flag, which are the Global Action Agenda on Agricultural Innovation. Great. I'm glad we've launched that. We now need to make that a reality. It is, again, trying to co-create and co-implement with so many, and we've got 150 partners for that. It sits alongside all the other various initiatives like the US and UAE one, AIM4C, and all of those. Final things to say, blended finance. Tamar, I completely agree. I think it's absolutely crucial. You've been mentioned to a statement by all the multilateral development banks. Nature has just been made at COP26. I think it's going to be really important in a way that we use finance from the MDBs, from countries, private sector, and acumen resilient agriculture, all of the impact funds like you, to actually make all of these difference. Thank you all very much, though. That's been incredibly rich, and my time was slightly curtailed, Yemi, but I was given a very short summary. Over to you, Yemi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Apologies. And now I just need to say thank you so much to our wonderful panelists, to Martin, who gave us a very important and really encouraging opening remarks, and to you, our audience out there. Thank you very much for hanging in with us and helping us to sort out the issue around nature, climate, and people. It's Yemi Akimbamijo, and now we can close this. Thank you very much for being with us. Bye-bye.